History Hunters is in Merced County today. What you're looking at right now is the Merced River. Flows out of Yosemite National Park, flows into the Central Valley of California. And this is the area where the famous explorer and conservationist John Muir hung out for a while when he was planning his trips to Yosemite. The recent rains have really made everything really beautiful and green here, and check this out. We've got a huge rainbow stretching across the sky above this dairy. So that is a really beautiful sight behind me. It's a rainbow. It's been raining here in Central California today, on and off, and I wasn't sure that I'd be able to come up here. I'm in Merced County. A lot of you probably have never heard of this place. It's called Hopton. It's near Snelling, California. And it was settled in 1849. As you know, a lot of people back east came out here during the gold rush and they wanted to find gold. They set up their own towns. This is one town, no longer exists. And right over here, it shows us that initially this place was called Forlorn Hope. Basically a place where the enterprise isn't going to do too well. And they decided to later rename it Hopeton. There's not a whole lot left here in town. There's a cemetery up the road. I'm really afraid that it's going to be covered in wet grass, but if we're going to go check it out, I've never been here before, so we're going to, explore it together. So stay tuned. If you're flying down the road, you might notice this milk jug announcing Helmar Cheese Company supplier is here. And we're about 11 miles northeast of Atwater, located on the Merced River. There was a church present here in the town site as early as 1852, and by 1881 the town had a population of over 1,000. There was a school district here that survived until about 1973, and of course they closed it down. It's beautiful and green here today. Blue sky, occasionally with intermittent showers. And this persistent rainbow over here, that's crazy. There's a church way off in the distance over there. It's just about the only building left in Hopton. St. John's Catholic Church. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot left here in Hopton. All right, so let's go down the road here and see if we can find this cemetery. I didn't even know Hopton had a cemetery until this morning, and I was looking, and I found that there's a cemetery here, and here it is. Oh, good. Fortunately, we're going to be able to take a look there. The grass isn't too bad. I gotta tell you, I'm really relieved. I just thought that this was going to be mile-high grass and not be able to allow me to go in here. But obviously, just from this distance, we can tell that a lot of these graves have just been destroyed over the years. I don't know if vandals got to it or if it was the work of Mother Nature and elements. But we'll go check out some of the graves here. There are really some great majestic oaks here, valley oaks, and definitely wanted to check out this obelisk marker here. And it's for the Buckleys. You'll see that it says Sylvanus Buckley, 1809 to 1887, and his wife Phoebe, she died in 1892, and we have an E. Harmon, he was 60. Now, the significance of him is the fact that he was in Mount Pleasant, Iowa in 1844. He was manufacturing plows for the farmers back there, and he heard of all these glowing accounts of the gold being discovered in California, and accordingly he closed his business and started to cross the plains to California in 1849. Buckley mined in Placer County and was among the first 49ers who pioneered mining on the Yuba River. He was successful, so he went back east to Iowa. He visited his family in 1853, and then he went to New York. He came back to the mines, and in 1856 he made his second trip to see his family and bring them to the coast. They came via Nicaragua and across the isthmus there and arrived in San Francisco on July 20th, 1856. From this time, he turned his attention to ranching around here. He ultimately owned about 16,000 acres of land here. He embarked in the sheep business, and then he died at the age of 79 in 1887. There's moss growing on the west side of this marker, but on this side there's less, and you can see the faint outline of some oak clusters, oak leaf clusters on here. But this side is really significant. Unfortunately, it looks like he got shot or something. This is the grave of E.F. Staley, 1866 to 1922. And I understand that he was a blacksmith here. As you all know, blacksmiths were very important. They kept the wagon wheels on the wagons and fixed all aspects of, shoeing horses or the engines for these wagons. And what's really touching is the fact that Mr. Staley died in 1922. His daughter was Bertha. She was 5 years old. She was fond of her dad. And as you can see, she lived until 2009, and her wish was to be buried next to her father. There's some horrible tragedy associated with this woman. So the piece that I read about Bertha stated that she was just a warm human being. She was always helping out others. She was baking cookies for neighbors. Her and her husband Max were the first people in Snelling to have a TV, and a lot of people would come over and watch TV with them. She was always doing for others. Very happy individual, very active in the community, and the worst day of her life happened on April 6, 1970. Her son Roger Gore was a California Highway Patrol officer assigned down in Southern California, and if that name rings a bell, it should. He was one of the 4 officers who was killed in the Newhall massacre. He was raised in this area of Merced County. He's actually buried in Snelling, not far from here. We did a video on that. We showed you his grave. But Bertha, her life was devastated, if you can only imagine. Not only did she lose her father at a very young age, but she lost her son when he was 23 years old. I cannot imagine the tragedy that people bear up under. They have to have a really strong constitution. Just the fact that she probably missed her dad her entire life. Of course, her son from 1970 on. The closest thing I can relate to is that my dad's dad died when he was 6 years old. He was only like 36, 37 years old. He had some mental issues, and as a result, he was taken to the Stockton State Mental Hospital, where he was subsequently kicked in the stomach, I understand, by another patient there, and he developed an abscess and later died. My grandmother, believe it or not, was notified of his death by mail days later. So it's strange how things have changed in our society, but death and sorrow have not. According to what I read online, there's approximately 31 burials here. I'm not sure what's happened here. Somebody's left up My Little Pony here at this grave. Lucy W., daughter of J.M. and Ann Strong. I understand that J.M. stands for James Madison Strong. He was called the Colonel around here. We don't know if he's actually buried here or not, but he basically grew up in Georgia, and in 1837 he was in Mississippi, and he sailed around the Horn to California on the SS John S. Cawley, arriving in San Francisco on June 10th, 1850. He was a teamster around Sacramento and Healdsburg and Grass Valley. He moved to Mariposa County in 1855, and he became the deputy sheriff there from 1856 to 1857. Back in those days, they didn't have to have a lot of training, just had to have a lot of guts and carry a gun on your side. Now, in 1871, he started one of the first cotton plantations in this area along the Merced River. He was a Democrat and a delegate to the California Constitutional Convention from Mariposa and Merced counties. And he died in Sacramento while a delegate in 1878. His body was sent here to Merced for interment, so he may be in Merced. Little Lucy was 28 days old. So look at this sad marker. Man, been knocked off the pedestal and broken. Barbara A. Dipe, wife of Henry, native of Virginia. She died August 17, 1884. She was 62 years old, 2 months and 15 days. And right next to her is a partial marker. This is sad. I mean, pieces of it completely broken up. Probably Barbara's husband, huh? Alright, so let's go over here and see what this one's all about. This one too has been knocked off its pedestal. I'm not sure if it's even intact. Actually quotes Job, "For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet out of my flesh I shall see God." Wow. This marker was made in Stockton. Let's go over here and look at this one. Oh, it looks like a baby. Wow, we got like a combination of headstones here. Whoever this was died in 1862, 25 years of age. And here's Willard Hamilton, died November 14th, 1871. He was 1 year old. "He who gave us sweet pleasure now hath left us saddest something that's been broken." Look at that. And there's the base of it. Here's another marker busted off the base. Sacred to the memory of John T. Stockard, who was born in Carroll County, Tennessee, April 23rd, 1820. And his date of death looks like 1869. Looks like he was a Mason. There are at least another 5 markers here. And, oh, this is very interesting, but I'm going to have to do some careful removal of weeds. Look at that. Oddfellows. Farewell. Oh, this is S.H.P. Ross. He died in 1873. He was 41. I'm sure Mr. Ross wouldn't appreciate what's been happening to his marker, but he's in a different world. He doesn't care, I'm sure. I think we care more how our dead are treated. Yeah, that's sad. Not sure what the weather's doing. So if you see sun out and then cloudy, it's all because of the strange weather we're having today. It's a mixture of both rain and... Actually, it hailed this morning before I left. Very peaceful place. Now here's another obelisk that's been knocked off its pedestal. There's nothing on this except for this mark right here. As you can see here, it's the grave of Dr. D.C. McCroskey. He was born in Caldwell County, Kentucky, August 2nd, 1882, and he died March 26th, 1870. Wow. I wonder why they haven't put that back together. I don't know who's even in charge of this cemetery. Another sad, busted up marker. Obviously a baby marker because it's so small and it says "Our Babe." It's just broken stone. It's insane. Gee whiz. Well, the rest of this certainly looks like it could be burial grounds, but I don't know. It sure doesn't appear that there's anyone else buried out here. Well, here we have a grave of an Eberhard Feist, or Feast? Probably Feist. Memory of Eibert Feist, beloved father of Mrs. W.A. Grade, native of Germany, born October 15th, 1807, He died March 15th, 1881. Check out the ladybug on top there. Lilies. Don't they represent eternal life? You know, a lot of things have changed in our country since these people passed away and were buried here. Just the way that we treat grief. It used to be in the old days, if somebody passed away, you would bring them into the house after they've been, you know, embalmed and taken care of. And they had wakes in houses, and death was celebrated. People would, well, it wasn't celebrated, but people did not shun it. They would actually take pictures with the dead body, and now it's like we don't want to see it. We don't want to hear about it. But there's a James Rutledge buried here. I have a paper on him. I'm just going to read it. I don't think his marker's out here. It could be buried. James Rutledge, he was born in 1818 and he died in 1854. We actually have a picture of him, probably a daguerreotype. They actually formed a committee here in Merced County just to express their sorrow about the passing of Mr. Rutledge. And they passed a resolution. It was voted on. It's strange that it was published in a newspaper. It says, whereas we, the citizens of the Merced Valley, are deeply afflicted by the death of one of our earliest citizens, James Rutledge, who has been called from a life of usefulness. Now, sometimes I wonder if people lead lives that have been useful. From the bosom of a beloved and interesting family, and from a community in which those high attributes of a kind husband and father, a firm and sincere friend, and overpowering neighbor, and worthy citizens were highly appreciated, and which rendered the deceased the esteem of his fellow citizens. Therefore resolved that we recognize J.W. Rutledge, whose qualities which adorn the character of the husband and parent, the neighbor and citizen, and that his family and this community have experienced a great and irreparable loss. Resolved that we heartily sympathize with the family of our late deceased friend on this, their sad bereavement. And it was published in the Mariposa Chronicle in Mariposa, California on February 12th, 1854. I decided to drive to the Snelling Cemetery to revisit the grave of Bertha's son, CHP officer Roger Gore, who was killed in the Newhall massacre. The neighboring marker for his father, Max Gore, puzzled me, for at his side is a marker of Bertha, showing her birth year and death year. This would contradict the inscription at the Hopeton Cemetery by son Tim, which indicates that she has a rest there. Could it be that Bertha was cremated and her ashes were placed at both locations? Or did Bertha intended to be buried in Snelling but later change her plans? At the present moment I don't know, but I know that former Constable Max Gore took his own life in 1986. One of my recent videos, I was asking why a lot of people who are watching my video aren't subscribed, and I bumped into one gentleman at the store the other day, and he told me he watches this all the time on his TV with his wife, and then he asked me, how do you subscribe? And I said, well, you just have to form an account. He said, well, can you even do that on the TV? And I thought, no, good question. So I don't know the answer to that. It's probably where you have to do it on your home computer, set up your account, and then of course you can log in on your streaming service, but it's not necessary. We just love to have you watch our channel. So thanks so much, and if you can subscribe, we would appreciate that as well. Thanks.